Hey, Randy Joe here, and welcome back to the channel where, if you have been following, we have been listening to every single Pink Floyd album in the discography from the beginning all the way, of course, until we get to the very end. Now, continuing on from our last video, we are doing a part 2. I never split albums into multiple videos, but seeing as this album is a live studio album hybrid, I thought it felt like it made more sense to split them up as such, seeing as even the Pink Floyd fans seem to suggest taking in the album in this fashion. Now, with that in mind, the album, of course, I'm talking about, since I have not introduced it yet, is, of course, the 1969 LP, Ummagumma. In the first video, we covered, like I said, the live section, and if you are interested in live reactions and really just my whole unedited reaction of that live section, go ahead and check out the Patreon, which I will link in the description as well as in the comments. You could check it out there for $5 a month. You get full unedited videos as well as bonus content from tier 10 upwards. So again, if you're interested in that, go ahead and check it out. But back to the main video here. We are talking, of course, about side 2. Side 2 consists of 4, or I guess 5, but the 4 members, I should say, splitting up and taking their own risk by having their own subsection. Of course, we kick it off with what seems to be Richard Wright's side from what I read, on to Roger Waters', then Gilmour's, then ending it with, from what I gather, Nick Mason's section. So, you know, a studio album of side 2, Ummagumma. That's what we're covering today. Kicking off, we've got Richard Wright with Sysyphus. And like I said, again, if you want to watch this video fully unedited, $5 a month, it's on my Patreon. It's already there now if you're watching this. So, Sysyphus Part 1, let's get into it. I did really enjoy that live section. I thought it was some of their most unified work yet. Very great chemistry throughout, and kind of suggests the direction they're going into. So let's see how they go kind of on their own here individually with Sysyphus Part 1. Richard Wright. Personally, my favorite performer of the batch. There we go. Very kind of epic opening right off the bat. Alright, easing into part 2 here. That section, very epic in scale. Those drums feeling quite daunting. Seeing as it is their own section each. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're working almost individually in their own sections too. A nice, pretty piano passage. An interesting section so far. Very minimal. Both part 1 and 2 have been so far. Not sure how I'm feeling on the evolution of it. Quite a menacing tone this piano carries. Really feels like not a whole lot's happening here. I think Richard Wright forgot there should be more substance than just a pure atmosphere that he's trying to conjure. Because right now there's nothing to grasp onto. Let's keep it going. Part 3 here. That section really didn't do anything for me. Felt like a meandering madness on the piano. And then this section, really no flow, no sense of, transition. Did Richard Wright develop amnesia, perhaps? Forget how to perform these instruments? Wow, that is oh my goodness, quite a dizzying array of sounds we're getting on both part 2 and part 3, slowly ramping up the intensity, but with absolutely no rhyme or reason to it. Kind of disappointing so far, being named after such a classic Greek reference, the Greek mythology of Sysyphus. But again, wondering what's the point here. Here's part 4, the longest of this 4-part epic. I don't even know if epic is the word I would use. 7.5 minutes. I am seeing why this is typically revered as, I guess, the worst to some of Pink Floyd's batch. After how well unified and I would say strong they sound as a group in that live section, it's kind of crazy to see the contrast of how poorly Richard Wright seems to be coming off here without the rest of the gang. Maybe a sense of tranquility after the kind of insanity that was track 3. Perhaps Richard Wright was trying to go for some sort of impactful contrast here. It's just, it almost, it almost feels like a soundtrack, like I'm missing a visual component here, perhaps to match the music, and yet there exists no visual component to make it in any way better. Even the menacing tones that we've heard so far from Sysyphus here have already been done much better on their first few LPs, but let's keep it going. Yeah, wow. Other than the atmosphere, which feels quite palpable, crushing, menacing. There's no rhyme or reason for it. There's nothing here to really talk about. I've got some comments about Ummagumma as a whole, but I'll save that till the end. Otherwise, this is just not a very interesting or enjoyable 4-track continuation. I give them props for at least effectively capturing a tone. And if there's one thing I could say, it's that Richard Wright certainly shows off his ability to craft and potentially craft some great horror soundtracks or some very kind of epic sounding scaling tracks, but there really isn't anything to go off of other than that. Sysyphus, parts 1 to 4, just like I said, a meandering mess of tone and atmosphere. Here's Grantchester Meadows. We're going now into Roger Waters' section, if I'm not mistaken, who has 2 tracks here, but it seems like, his section is split into 2 tracks. Grantchester Meadows being the first of such. Clearly the most popular, though, so I am expecting something of substance, certainly something here that keeps people coming back. So let's get into it. Grantchester Meadows. All right. There is vocals, at least. There is maybe something here thematically that we can gather. They love their use of bird sounds so far in their LPs. I do like the more acoustic leaning we're getting here. Like I said on their album More, I love the acoustic sections. Certainly more of a sweeter, more indie sound. Definitely a lot more to go off of here than Sysyphus. See the splashing of the kingfisher flashing to the water. Maybe taking in an appreciation for nature and the world around him. Quite a sweet track, quite a cute track. Laughing as it passes through the endless summer, making for the sea. And I do like the more minimal approach that Roger Waters is taking here. Instead of trying to make anything grand in their usual sense, he understands that being a solo act here might be better to go more minimal. I really like this one. It's giving me Nick Drake vibes. Huge fan. I like that nice double backing vocal. From what I gather, it's just Waters singing here on both vocals. Sounding quite sweet and harmonious with these birds. Very sweet, very summery, spring-like track. Just feels like we are taking in nature, appreciating the world around us. Great acoustic as well. Again, feels very kind of like Nick Drake coded in a sense. I think definitely shows off Roger Waters' potential quite significantly as a member here. The hell? Did Waters just murder an animal at the end there? What a way to end a track about, from what I gather, the beauty of nature. Okay, let's go into several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pict. All right, he's trying to hit that word limit. Continuing off the kind of nature-esque, last track. Grantchester Meadows was the name. Will he go maybe a bit more abstract here, I wonder? Is this actually what the track describes, the title? Animals in a cave. How to even get these recordings? I come to wonder. This is horrifying. What am I hearing here? I don't like this. I don't like this at all. This album is a disaster. What is side 2 here? This thing is horrific. Very nonsensical. Very experimental, though. I'll give him that. This feels like it is 5 minutes too long. The fact that this could have ended the last track good 30 seconds or so would have been just fine. Okay. I'm over this chipmunk show. It's awful. This is terrible. This is awful. Genuinely. What might be one of the worst things I've reacted to on this channel. Genuinely. This... Can't imagine the label being too happy with this. All right. Certainly would imagine it would. It sounds like a bunch of addicts there in a cave, perhaps. Wow, that is a disaster. That is terrible. That is genuinely horrendous music that we're hearing here. Let's go into the narrow way. Whatever Gilmour is cooking up for this 3-track here has to be better than what we've heard from both Several Species and Sysyphus. Grantchester Meadows, I'll give Waters that. He did do a fairly good job, I should say, at executing a track that is at least enjoyable and has a melody and has some sort of purpose and direction, whereas these all feel improvisational and also just grating to the ear. Gilmour, Narrow Way, Part 1. Take it away, mister. Now, what can he do? Hopefully something significantly better. Did not like that opening. It's not boding well. But this is at least something. Sweet acoustics. I like this more twangy direction too. With how rustic it sounds. Kind of reminds me of the more acoustic leanings of Led Zeppelin in the early 70s as well. Led Zeppelin 3 era. I even like these risings. It's tense. It's foreboding. Definitely has a bit more, I would say, of a direction than a lot of the more abstract pieces we've heard. Oh! Abrupt end. Here's Part 2, Narrow Way. Into something far more menacing. I feel like we are on the prowl. Again, I'm hearing a lot of unique ideas. I really like that kind of gnarly riff that we're getting throughout this thing that is more menacing in tone. Kind of reminds me of a King Crimson Red era. But again, shows potential of something greater. I think if there's one thing I'm getting from this second half of the LP, it's that all four members certainly have unique ideas and unique takes on these ideas that could, again, unified as one unit, lead to something much greater, which of course we know they do not much longer. So that's something we're gathering here. If they're thinking about going solo, one thing taught them here is don't. Let's go into part 3 here. I like that transition. I will acknowledge that. It was smooth. We do have some lyrics this time around, it seems. This is Gilmour singing here. I do like this rising tension. Will this have a payoff? Will this deliver on anything? I kind of doubt it at this point. Oh, I like this release though. Oh, I do like this. You know what? I'm giving this one a like. So far, one of the better tracks. Definitely feels like the most... Oh. By far the most concrete, fleshed out idea on the second half of this LP. Give it up for Gilmour. A bit of a saving grace. And again, signaling out where they go. Even Gilmour's drumming here is quite dramatic in its scale. I believe it's Gilmour drumming here. That's what it says, at least. But, oh. I love the heaviness of it. It fades out. A long fade out. Gilmour here definitely feels the most focused, the most narrowed in on his idea. Definitely the most fully fleshed out of everything we've heard so far. Narrow Way Part 3, probably my favorite of this whole batch. I did like Grantchester Meadows a decent amount, but this might take the cake overall, just in terms of its scale, and I really like the flow of it. But parts 1 and 2 are attached, technically speaking, and those are a little bit meandering and quite middling. Let's go into the final section of the LP, that of course being the widely underrated, in my opinion, Nick Mason. A great drummer. He is incredible on some of their earlier tracks, I would even say. And here's Grand Vizier's Garden Party, his contribution to Ummagumma. Part 1, entrance. Just a short opening, 1 minute. Take it away, Mason. A very whimsical LP from all members, I would say. Oh. There's Mason. A drum roll. I hope it's just 7 minutes of him drumming away. I hope that's what part 2 entertainment is. Let's get into it. And I hope to God it's nothing like what we heard on Sysyphus. At least there's a repetition to gather here. Where's this going? Oh. We rise. It's like we're rapidly ascending. Kind of like an ambience to this section. I could do without that kind of like rattling hum. That soft chime-like almost is certainly far more interesting to me. What even is this track? What do you... There's something I feel like you would do in your first time using a DAW. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Kid's first drum set or something. Kind of want this album to be over. At what point do you just throw in the towel? This is actually terrible. And it's still going. We still got another minute and a half. 2 minutes if you count the closer. If I was the record label, I would have dropped them entirely at this point. I've never heard a band feel so completely lost in their direction. Which does make this in some way interesting. Oh, he remembered how to play here. Thank God. Okay. I would have taken this for 7 minutes. Let's get into part 3, Grand Vizier's Garden Party. Closing at the LP. Where was this whimsy on part 2? And that does it for the disaster that is Ummagumma Disc 2. Wow. 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 That's terrible. Genuinely. Awful. Directionless. Pointlessly experimental music here. Grantchester Meadows and Narrowway Part 3 are definitely the standout tracks. And I'm using that term very, very loosely here when I say stand out. It's because they are actually fully fledged, functioning, ideas that feel like they have a beginning, middle, and end to them. And at least Grantchester Meadows kind of exists within its own realm. Narrowway Part 3 is unfortunately tied to Part 1 and 2, which have, again, the same directionless, lost, really just devoid of purpose. That the same, that could be said about Sysyphus as well as Grand Vizier's Garden Party. So I guess if I had to pick a best track, it would probably, I guess, would have to be Grantchester Meadows. But Narrowway Part 3, to me, was overall more of an interesting peak if you're taking the whole thing at once. But wow, Sysyphus really felt like there was really no rhyme or reason to any of it. Not a single reason for it to exist. Richard Wright, despite being one of my, a member that I've showed some great admiration for, definitely feels like he was just maybe excited to do something unique on his own in the band, and it doesn't really pay off here. Roger Waters, same could be said about him. Definitely feels like a more unique direction aside from the band. I like the kind of acoustic leanings it took. Like I said on More, I really like the acoustic leanings, and here Roger Waters sort of runs with that quite a bit more in what seems to be a track about a love of nature, perhaps. A very whimsical, very sweet, cute track. Narrowway Part 3, Gilmour, I think showing off the direction that the band would go in his own solo form. And I definitely liked Part 3. I really liked the direction of it. Again, very fully fledged in its own way. Not anything groundbreaking, but it certainly, I think, shows the kind of leadership role that he has as a band member. And then, of course, Nick Mason with Grand Vizier's Garden Party. Honestly, nothing to say about that. Right up there with Richard Wright in terms of the same kind of meandering, pointless sort of contribution to the track list. Ummagumma as a whole, I have to say one thing that is, I guess, interesting about this LP, the one thing to take from this LP, is that the live side is actually pretty, spectacular in its own way. It definitely shows the band at this point in time what they're capable of with their previous tracks, as well as showing how great they are chemistry-wise as a unified unit. It definitely feels like a worthwhile listen, whereas side 2, not a worthwhile listen, but only worthwhile if you're interested in seeing the contrast of the band together and the band apart. Because I really do think if there's one thing about Ummagumma you could say, Ummagumma, it's that it really showcases the importance of chemistry in a band. And, they do have incredible chemistry, but on their own, they are completely lost, it would seem at this point. And of course, that is public knowledge. The band was a little bit confused on what direction to go in, and we are obviously very lucky and fortunate that they figured that out. From Metal onwards, have not heard Metal yet, but I'm very excited to check that out. But really not much more to say about this one. If you want to see the full reaction of this unedited for whatever reason, I don't imagine it would offer much more. And this was a grating listen for me. Genuinely an album that I was looking forward to the end of. You can check it out on my Patreon for $5. I'll throw the whole unedited mix up there. But moving on, let's get into the next Pink Floyd. I can't wait to see where they go from here because, as we know, they grow and they certainly improve in time. So the next LP is going to be covered. That'll be Atom Heart Mother, which seems to be at least a little bit more interesting and compelling of a listen. But as always, my name is Randy Joe. I appreciate you watching. If for some reason you stuck around this long, that is wild because this album was a struggle to get through. But as always, my name is Randy Joe. I appreciate you watching so much, and I'm signing off.